Sometimes life changes not in big moments, but in completely unremarkable ones. When you think you're just drunkenly chatting with a friend on the balcony. I remember that day down to the last detail. Although it wasn't special, on the contrary, it was almost transparent. A typical Friday, the end of a long week, everything went wrong in the morning. I overslept, didn't have time to drink coffee, my socks didn't match my shirt, someone at work complained about my report. And when I left the office, all I wanted was silence, simple words and wine. When Mia wrote, "I'll pop in for an hour, I'll get wine and sushi, I just want to chat," I only replied with a heart. I didn't have to decide anything. By 8 p.m., I opened the door and she was already standing there with a bottle of Sauvignon and a bag of California roll. "Is your balcony still okay?" she asked, walking inside. "More or less. There's only mold in one corner now." We sat down on the old wicker chairs, the ones that creak with every movement, and which I kept promising to throw out. The wind was warm, the wine was cold, the city smelled of July. Below us, like in a movie, cars crawled slowly, the streetlights scattered in the side, and the air was full of a premonition of something that didn't happen. "So, how's Mike?" Mia asked between sips. She said it as if by accident, but I caught the subtext. She'd wanted to ask this for a long time. I paused, took a big sip. She glanced sideways at the crimson glass of the glass. And then, "Good." Pause. Sometimes even too much. Mia grinned, biting into the sushi. "Too good? I'm sorry he doesn't throw you emotional roller coasters and doesn't forget your birthday. Is that a crime?" I laughed, but there was a scratch in my laughter. "He's like he's from a manual." "What do you mean?" "He listens, he supports. He always comes over when I'm tired. He cooks eggs the way I like them. He even remembered once that I don't eat capers. That's boring? It's like I'm in an ad for the perfect guy." I took another sip and, no longer looking at her, added, "Sometimes I catch myself waiting for him to screw up, just to feel something real. There are men with whom you feel like you're in a movie, and there are those with whom you feel like you're on a schedule. Mike and I started dating 3.5 months ago. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party. He was the embodiment of stability. Not the best dancer, not the life of the party, not a rock star, but reliable. From the first days, he took the initiative. He wrote every morning, "Good morning, have a nice day." Sometimes he sent funny videos of dogs. After 2 weeks, he already knew what dishes I ordered at my favorite Thai restaurant. A month later, he met my cat and was not offended when the cat ignored him. He was exactly the one you should want, and I even liked it. At first. I liked that I didn't have to guess, will he write or not, that I didn't have to prepare for his mood like the weather, that we had plans, logic, consistency. But there was no heat, no doubt, no wild desire. I even tried to convince myself that this was mature love, that fire is for teenagers, and for us it was a partnership, that when a man doesn't hurt you, it's not boring, it's great. But every time I opened the door and saw him with grocery bags and a can of coconut milk in his hand, something inside whispered, "You live in a cozy cage, and you miss the storm." Wine is a strange conductor. It doesn't force you to tell the truth, it just turns off the editor who usually whispers, "Don't say that out loud." The second bottle was on the table, already half empty. We weren't in a hurry. We weren't drinking to get drunk. We were soaking up the night, stretching out every pause between sips. Mia was laughing. Loudly. The way only she can. She was telling me how her ex, the one we all called a mobile emotional hell, had sent her a voicemail at 2:47 a.m. with the text, "Are you still laughing like you used to?" Did he seriously think that this could bring anything back? She snorted, biting into a roll. Memes, voicemails, old songs, that's all he had left. The pathetic aftertaste of toxic love. I laughed along with her. But then something strange pricked my chest. She, with these dramas, crazy text messages, late-night confessions, being on the doorstep, and me, I don't even have arguments, I exhaled, leaning back in the chair. "What do you mean?" Mia looked at me, wiping her fingers with a napkin. "With Mike, we've never even argued. He accepts everything. He understands everything. Even when I'm angry or silent or snap at something stupid, he just listens calmly." "And that's bad?" "No. Yes." I rolled my eyes and laughed, not knowing what more. "It's like an all-inclusive hotel. Everything works, everything is on schedule. But at some point you start to miss ordinary life, street food, accidents. I looked up at Mia and suddenly said, almost in a whisper, but with the feeling that I was shouting at the entire balcony, "Sometimes I wish he would do something at least once that I could be angry at him for. Seriously, for him to be late, not come, forget, say something rude, or even..." Even what? Mia narrowed her eyes. I took another sip, and already looking into the distance, I quietly added, "Even cheat. Then I would have a reason to leave and not feel guilty." The silence thickened. Mia opened her mouth but then simply exhaled and shook her head. "You're asking the universe for an excuse." I nodded. "Because if I leave without a reason, I'll be a monster, and if he makes a mistake first, I'll be a victim." "Lauren," she said softly, "it's not Mike's fault that you don't love him." I looked away, tapped my fingernail on the glass. "Just thoughts, just wine, just hormones." "Just the truth," she added. "Some moments in life don't need sound. A single click can turn the air into ice." It was already late evening. The clock was approaching 11. A slight dampness enveloped the balcony. The people under the windows walked more slowly, more quietly. The streets became private. Everything began to sound louder. Drops from the air conditioner, the rustle of leaves, and even my own thoughts. I was just looking at the girl on the opposite balcony. She was painting her nails under the light of a lantern when I heard this sound. The click of the lock. Quiet, but clear, like a shot to the heart. My head turned of its own accord. In the doorway of the kitchen stood Mike. He looked not shabby, not angry, usually. In his gray hoodie, jeans and sneakers, which I once called not stylish enough. He was holding a paper bag from Whole Foods. There was a carton of almond milk and a green bunch of cilantro sticking out of it. The same stuff I put in my salad when I was in a good mood. He stood there not moving any further, as if his feet couldn't bring themselves to cross the threshold. I didn't move. Mia didn't either. He looked at us. At me. And he said, very quietly, almost like they say in church, "I forgot my keys. I didn't want to scare you." I opened my mouth to say something, to explain, to cover up, to apologize, but I couldn't. He walked into the kitchen and put the bag on the table, calmly, almost theatrically. He stood there for a few seconds, and then turned back to me. Our eyes met, and there was no anger in them. No accusation, no pain, only pure understanding. He heard everything, every word. Sometimes a look can say more than your entire vocabulary, and sometimes the silence between you sounds louder than a scream. He didn't slam the door. He didn't make a reproach. He just left, and I stayed. On the balcony, with a glass. With Mia, who was also silent now. I heard him put on his sneakers in the hallway. The same ones I hated for their ugly soles. How he pulled the lock, how he lingered for a second, as if waiting for me to say something, but I was silent, and he left. And now, nothing. The air doesn't move. Mia doesn't move. I sit, still holding the glass, in which a few drops remain, and look out at the street, as if this city understands anything. Everything is empty inside, as if the contents have been poured out of me, and at the same time I feel every part of my body, as if it were the moment of the accident. My hands are icy, my stomach is clenched, my throat feels like it's being scratched from the inside. He looked at me when he left, and I saw something in his eyes that made me want to burst into tears, break apart, disappear. Not resentment, not anger, not drama, but awareness. As if he had just found out that everything he had built with me, everything that seemed real to him, was in fact impenetrable to him. He had always been very attentive. He subtly sensed my emotions, even if I was silent. But that evening, he simply heard the real me when I wasn't going to be real. "He understood everything," Mia said 10 minutes later. "I know," I whisper. "That's the horror, that I can't even pretend that it all sounded different. When a person leaves, not forever, but for real, a different quality of silence remains in the house. I didn't go in from the balcony for a long time. The wine had long since run out, the sushi remained untouched. My shoulders were freezing, but I didn't want to move. As if I just didn't move, everything would remain as it was. Mia left a little later. She hugged me silently, without explanation. Write to me if anything, she said. Yeah, I nodded, although I knew I wouldn't write. When I was left alone, the apartment seemed alien to me. Every little thing suddenly began to breathe his absence. Here's his toothbrush in a glass. Here are the socks that he washed and folded in my drawer. Here is the TV remote control that he always put on the armrest, although I threw it on the sofa. Such unbearably small things that had seemed like background before now seemed like evidence. I walked around the apartment like a field after a hurricane, carefully, without any sudden movements. Everything inside was strangely calm, like after a storm when you understand. It's quiet because everything is already destroyed. I didn't cry. I just sat on the floor in the hallway by the wall and listened to this new silence. There was no hope in it. There was no panic. There was only emptiness, in which you suddenly hear someone whispering slowly, almost respectfully, in your head. You broke everything, and now it's yours. He understood everything, Mia said 10 minutes later. I know, I whisper. That's the horror, that I can't even pretend that it all sounded different. You don't notice how the distance grows. At first you write a little less often. Then your voice is a little quieter. And then one day you're sitting at the same table and between you is the universe. We met 4 days later. He didn't write. I didn't either. But then on the fourth night when I again didn't sleep until 3 and imagined how he would never call again, I plucked up my courage and wrote, "Can I see you? No promises, just talk." He answered half an hour later. Tomorrow, at 5 p.m., the coffee shop on 12th Street. I arrived at the place 20 minutes before. I sat in the corner by the window and changed my position for the 3rd time. My legs were crossed, then at my sides, then back again. I ordered tea. Although I usually drink coffee, I couldn't decide whether I wanted him to come or not to come. He showed up exactly at 5 p.m., as always. Dressed as usual, reserved, clean, casual. No signs of an internal storm, only his eyes, a little dimmer. I noticed it right away. He sat down opposite me, took off his jacket, looked at me, and waited. I didn't know where to start. As if any first word would be wrong. I didn't want you to hear it like that, I finally squeezed out. He nodded. I understand. I didn't want you to get hurt. I understand. A pause. He didn't help. He didn't try to diffuse the situation. He didn't persuade me. He just waited for me to speak out. And that was worse than screaming. I don't know what's wrong with me. Sometimes I swallowed. Sometimes I confuse anxiety with love. If it doesn't hurt, it's not real. And I know, it's stupid logic. But I still think that love is when you shake. And you didn't shake me. You were just kind. He looked, quietly, intently, as if he was hearing me without a filter for the first time. And then he said, "Lauren, what?" I wasn't angry. I wasn't offended. Then what? He paused. So long that I heard someone stirring coffee nearby. And only then, very softly, I just realized that you expect something different from me, something I can't do. I didn't ask you to change. Exactly. He smiled, almost sadly. You just wanted me to become different myself, without asking, without words, just became. And I am me, and I love you quietly, without storms. And I wanted a hurricane. Yes, he nodded. And I am not a storm. I am an island, and you sailed away from it before you even started building a house. A pause, and then he stood up. He took his glass. He raised the collar of his coat and said, "Thank you for being honest, although not with me, but with a friend." He left, without offense, without anger. He left as a man who finally accepted this is not his story. Some sounds are unforgettable. Like the click of a key in a lock, like a step down the stairs, like a silence that said everything. A little over a month had passed. I didn't count the days, but my body knew. It was as if a timer had been set in it, and every evening, exactly at 8:42 p.m., the time he usually arrived, an alarm flared up inside me. Short, meaningless, as if I was expecting it. Although I already knew for sure it wouldn't happen. I didn't write anymore. He didn't either. Mia called a couple of times, asking if I wanted to talk, but each time I answered that I was busy. Although in reality, I just didn't know what to say. Sometimes I caught myself listening to that night again, my phrase, my laughter. Words. Sometimes I think I just want him to cheat on me. I remember the relief I felt when I said it, as if I had thrown off a mask, and the horror I later realized that in that very second everything changed. I tried dating others. I went on a couple of dates. People seemed nice. Conversations were light. One even knew how to cook, and also brought coffee to bed. But everything was like a picture in someone else's house. It seemed pretty, but not yours. Sometimes I ask myself, what did I really want? For him to yell, to be jealous, to be offended, to give me a reason to stay? But he did worse. He understood, and he didn't fight. He let me go, not as a punishment, but as a choice. And I suddenly realized, true maturity is not when you are kept at any cost, and when they let you go, even if it hurts, because love has pride too. Time does its thing. I started sleeping, I started eating, I started thinking about other things. But sometimes, when I hear the neighbor's door clicking or someone putting a key in the lock, I freeze for a second, as if my body hasn't gotten used to him not coming in, as if my heart is waiting for everything to be returned. But then a second passes, and I remember. He heard everything, and he understood, and he left, not because he was weak, but because I was no longer the one he could love out loud. Sometimes you already understand everything. But the soul asks, one more time, the last, a word, an answer, or just a breath of the past. It didn't happen on a sentimental evening, not on his birthday, and not on any special date. It was just night, warm. I was lying on the bed in a t-shirt and with a blanket, putting an old playlist on repeat, the one we once used to cook pasta to, and suddenly, everything became so loud. Music, pauses between songs, silence in the room. I turned to the phone, just to see that he was there. How is he? Not on Instagram, not on Facebook. I even deleted him from my subscriptions so as not to twitch. Just open the chat. The last message was mine. Thank you for listening. Read. Nothing more. A quiet end. And suddenly my fingers started writing on their own. No plan, no draft, no internal censorship. You're probably far away already. I don't want to return anything, just... If you ever think that no one heard you, no. I heard. I just learned to listen too late. I sat with this text, looking at the screen. My heart was pounding. My pulse was in my ears, as if everything inside me was howling. Send, or forget forever. And you know, I didn't send. I just pressed cancel, closed the chat, turned off the screen. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't cry. I just lay on my side. I closed my eyes, and I realized, you can miss, you can remember, but you don't have to go back to where you were a stranger, even to yourself. Some people come into your life with warmth, and then one day you meet them, and you feel only coolness. Not cold, not pain, just coolness. Like an empty house that hasn't been lived in for a long time. It happened, like everything important in my life, by accident. An ordinary morning. Late Saturday. I went into a store I almost never go to, simply because my favorite one ran out of pasta sauce. I was scrolling through the list on my phone, standing by the shelf with vegetables, and suddenly, I felt him. Have you ever caught this feeling? When your back starts to guess something before your eyes? I raised my head, and he was standing 2 meters away, in the grocery department, looking at the price tag, in a black sweatshirt, hair a little longer, face still the same, but calm. He noticed me a few seconds later, a glance, like a flash, a second of confusion, a second of memory, and a nod. Hello, he said. I nodded too. Hello? That's it. No, how are you? No, I was hurt. You've changed. I missed you. He stood there, not as a person I had hurt, but as just a person. As if everything between us was not a tragedy, but a phase of life. He didn't go to me. I didn't go to him. He simply nodded again, took the jar of sauce and went on, deep into the store, deep into his new route, deep into his new life. I stood there for a minute. Then I took the same jar he was holding. The laughter in my head was nervous. Seriously? What symbolism, Lauren? I didn't cry, I didn't tremble. But inside there was a feeling, as if I had finally let go. As if I saw, the person you had been remembering for so long is no longer part of your reality. He became your once upon a time, and will never again be your now. And I also realized that this is what I needed. Not letters, not meetings, not drama, but just to see that it was really over, that no one holds a grudge, that no one is expecting anything anymore. And in this, some strange, pure calm. Sometimes the end is not tears. It's the evening when you cook pasta for yourself and suddenly you realize you've had enough. I came home earlier than usual. The shopping bag jingled with keys. I took out a jar of sauce, the one he chose, cut the garlic, added oil, salted the water. There was no music playing in the kitchen. The TV was off. And in that silence, I suddenly realized I'm no longer afraid to be alone. Not because I learned to love myself, not because I survived, but because I no longer seek confirmation that I was right, and I don't hold on to what's gone. I set the table for one. No candles, no glass of wine, just a plate, a fork, steam from the pasta. I sat by the window, and for the first time in a long time, I ate not with a lump in my throat, but with a light, warm feeling in my chest. Now that's it.